All right. I am back. I could not wait. It's been far too long, y'all. It's been far too long. Today's show, broadcast, breakdown, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be a little different. Y'all know, if you've been following, my content and, a lot of the things that I've been doing with my team, my crew, Chad O. Jackson, Blanchard Robinson, and Keisha King, you know the type of stuff that, I focus on and what we focus on pretty much as a team. But, this time I wanted to really dive into something a bit, I don't necessarily want to say off the rails, but it isn't something that I talk about a lot. But I feel like it needs to be dealt with. It's somewhat of a vanity project of mine because I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. A while back, a few months ago, I did something on Malcolm X, and I spoke back then about how I sort of wanted to get into a little bit of the origins, as a matter of fact, of the Nation of Islam. And, this one right here is going to upset some folk. But, if y'all know me, y'all know I don't care. All right, let me just reach down to my grab bag because I brought a couple books with me. Okay. And we're going to be reading from a couple books. What's up, IG? What's up, Dave? I'm going to need you on this one, dog, because I'm going to need that special 10 bridge thumbnail, when I upload this to YouTube. Man, again, I like to live stream from IG while I'm recording for my YouTube channel because, it kind of gets me in that mood, in that space, and I feel like, somebody's watching, I have an audience, whatever. I haven't started live streaming from YouTube yet because, I just, still building up my subscribers and whatnot, and I have a bigger audience on Instagram. So I live stream from Instagram instead of YouTube. So, another thing before I get started, a lot of folks, they talk about things that, they ought not speak on because they aren't really well versed in that particular area. You see a lot of folks doing that. You know what I mean? They think that, okay, well, if I know a little bit about something here, then I can speak on this and I can speak on that and whatever the case may be. But me personally, I like to stay in my lane. I focus a lot on, political theory and, philosophy, politics, communism in America in the 20th century and what have you. But, I do know a little bit about some other things, right? One of the things that, I really don't like to fool around with much is theology. Now, I will speak about God. I will bring God up. I may even reference the Bible from time to time. But again, the Bible, for example, is just one thing that, in order for a person to, I believe, be qualified enough to really speak on it with any semblance of confidence whatsoever, they must really dedicate a great deal of time, understanding and breaking these things down. And so I try, and not just with theology, but with all things. As they say, if you're a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. And so I feel as though it's best to just master one thing and, try and maybe dibble and dabble with some other things on the side, once you have a good handle on whatever it is that you're focused on, right? But, I'm going to talk about is this discussion isn't going to be theological. It's going to be cultural and historical, but it's going to deal with religious themes. OK, because if you look at the society today, whenever we do these political breakdowns, you hear a lot of folks, especially over here in the conservative talk space, it always comes back around full circle. And what do we always tell ourselves? Man, this is spiritual. It's a spiritual battle, y'all. This is bigger than just, politics. I don't know what we're going to do, but man, we know that the devil is working here. This is spiritual, right? And so we look at the abundance. What up, though, Seiko? What up, though, Chad? The secularization of our society. We always sort of tend to ask ourselves, well, how did we get here, right? How did this happen? A lot of people like to point to the counterculture of the 1960s, for example, right? I mean, just pick a time, pick a decade, and see, there lies, my point. When you're talking about human history, human beings have been around for quite a bit. And so it's difficult to determine and to understand exactly where to begin when you start to dive into a lot of these things. I mean, if you're talking about things that are contrary to God, well, then, I guess one could take it back to when, sin first entered the world with the fall of man. Right? When did these hollow and deceptive philosophies, when did these evil and wicked things, come into existence? Right? So this is why I felt the need to talk about this, because it influences the culture a lot. All right. And so I didn't want to speak on the 60s because we hear a lot about the 60s. And trust me, I do understand that there almost isn't enough that one can say about the 60s. I'm not trying to just poo-poo it and say, oh, screw it, we know everything that we need to know about the 60s, 70s and whatnot. But I felt the need to dig back a bit further because we're going to go into the 1800s, the 19th century. We're going to go into the 19th century. This particular discussion is going to be focused on a period between about 1880 and about 1930. All right. So if you look at the title, and it's probably going to be the title when I upload it to YouTube, but on Instagram, I have the title on the live stream, The God Within, From New Thought to the New Age. From New Thought to New Age. All right. Now, what are we talking about when we're talking about new thought? We're going to get into it because the God within, I almost started to call this the God within, subtitle, Man's Greatest Heresy. Man's greatest heresy is the idea and the belief that, of course, he could be a God. This is why, I say, well, you can bring it back to the Garden of Eden if you like, or, you can do what I'm about to do here. But again, I figured I would play around with this because, a lot of people, may not know about this, what I'm about to cover here and what I'm about to discuss. So again, y'all, this is going to be a little different. This is going to be, it isn't out of my wheelhouse. And I'm going to show you in a second, or maybe by the time I get to the end, why this is in fact in my wheelhouse still. I just don't talk about it much. But let's dive into it, y'all. And I appreciate y'all being here, those of you on IG. All right. Where my 5% is at. You read my mind, bro. You read my mind. So, again, from new thought to new age. So what is new thought? What is new thought? New thought metaphysics. What is new thought? Let me go to my summary. I'm going to read from an article that was published in the Tampa Bay Times on August 7th, 1999, written by Maureen Byrne. Maureen Byrne is reporting on the 84th Annual Congress of the International New Thought Alliance, which is a grassroots umbrella organization for individuals in the New Thought movement. All right. Byrne describes New Thought as a philosophy that dates to the 1800s and emphasizes the teachings of Jesus in a positive. A philosophy that dates to the 1800s and emphasizes the teachings of Jesus is a positive approach to living that emphasizes the practice of the presence of God for practical reasons. Its principles follow a free-willing Christian path with an openness to metaphysics and other philosophical thought. Sounds a bit contradictory, doesn't it? Just in that one sentence alone. A free-willing Christian path. Well, if it's a free-willing path, then how is it a Christian path? But again, still it warrants, further investigation. But that sentence alone should let you know what it is that we are in store for here. What's up, DeReal? Byrne quotes in this article an individual named Pat Buckley. I don't know if Pat Buckley is a man or woman, but this individual is the president of Emma Curtis Hopkins College and Theological Seminary. Pat Buckley says, and Byrne quotes Buckley, I came from a background of hellfire and brimstone and guilt. We see God not as a person. She's talking, or he is talking about those in the New Thought movement. We see God not as a person, but as a spirit who is within us and around us at all times. Byrne describes Buckley as being a person who was raised as a fundamentalist in the mid-1980s, and they turned to other religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, let me pause for a second, because this is a bit of foreshadowing, because, you know, my homeboy, Seiko Woods, you know, being the, yeah, I don't want to call him a troll, but if y'all know anything about Seiko Woods, you know, he'll get at you. You know what I mean? My boy, he go in. You know, he don't mind, you know, ruffling some feathers. So when I hear folk talk about Hinduism and Buddhism, you see what we are going to get into in the latter half of this discussion is what I refer to as Black Theosophy. Black Theosophy. It is a mashup of an Eastern philosophical mashup coupled with this sort of 20th century liberationism. All right. And you're gonna find out, you're gonna understand what I mean when I say that. Because as far as the 5%ers are concerned, even the Black Hebrew Israelites, the Black Muslims, and so on and so forth, much of their doctrine has been influenced by things that are not, again, you know, fundamental to the sort of names that these kind of movements brandish, say like Islam and Judaism and so on and so forth. These things have nothing, they vaguely resemble Islam and Judaism when you begin to break these things down. And we're going to get into it. But again, these things are coupled with this kind of racial mythology and this sort of, it's not just a tinge, it is an outright expression of this kind of Black liberationism coupled with a kind of mythology to cement the need for this kind of liberation. And of course, you know, men like Marcus Garvey and even W.E.B. Du Bois were central to the flowering of these movements in the early 20th century. And we're going to get to it if y'all just walk with me. Drawing on many Western and Eastern sources, especially the healing tradition of Christianity, New Thought recognizes Maine, as in the state of Maine. Now, you all may be familiar with this person if you've spent any bit of time researching and studying this material that I'm going over. New Thought recognizes Maine clockmaker, he was a clockmaker by trade, a man by the name of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, he is recognized as the father of New Thought. Phineas Quimby. Quimby, who developed a philosophy of mind cure in the early 1800s, taught that man's mental state could affect his circumstances, especially illness. Now, what do you hear being sort of thrown about today so carelessly about the power of the human mind and how the mind can do this and the mind can do that? You hear a lot of folks, you see these hashtags about manifestation and manifesting and so on and so forth. I was watching a talk between a woman who was a former witch. She was a former witch, and she was born again. She gave up that life, became a devout Christian, and she was giving her testimony to Dr. Sean McDowell. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. Sean McDowell. He has somewhat of has a popular YouTube channel, Dr. Sean McDowell. And, she was talking about how she is so disturbed being a former witch, seeing how frivolous and how carefree so-called Christians are in terms of using the kind of language that is synonymous with witchcraft. She's very troubled at how Christian culture and the culture of the occult are sort of becoming one. You hear a lot of Christians say, they speak this way. Thinking and you can achieve it and you can manifest it if you believe it and so on and so forth. Even especially sort of illness. And we're going to get more into Quimby. The ideas of Quimby, who died in 1866, influenced other metaphysical leaders such as Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the founders of Unity, and I've dedicated a section of this talk to this particular person. She was a huge influence on this whole thing here, and that is a woman by the name of Mary Baker Eddy. Mary Baker Eddy is the founder of Christian Science. And of course, if you're familiar with Mary Baker Eddy or in Christian Science, I'm sure, of course, you all are familiar with the publication, The Christian Science Monitor. This was the creation of Mary Baker Eddy and her philosophy of Christian Science. The Christian Science Monitor, I think, is still in print, still operating up until this very day. Throughout the entire history of the Christian Science Monitor, I believe, off memory, to this day, they've won 7 Pulitzer Prizes. The Christian Science Monitor. When I was about 18, 19 years old, I was attending community college. I had been kicked out of the university that I attended in my freshman year, and in my sophomore year, I attended Henry Ford Community College right outside of Detroit, and I had a class. I took a government class, and my professor, it was mandated for the class that you had to subscribe to either the New York Times or the Christian Science Monitor. You had to pick one. Now, I don't necessarily know why he chose the Christian Science Monitor. I think maybe from his point of view, the Christian Science Monitor was a more conservative paper, and the New York Times, I guess, was a more liberal paper. I suppose. I'm not quite sure exactly why he had us, pick those two. But anyway, Christian Science Monitor. So let's move on and let's go more into Quimby. Quimby was born February 16th, 1862 in Lebanon, New Hampshire. He died on January 16th in 1866 in Belfast, Maine. He was an American exponent of mental healing who is generally regarded as the founder of the New Thought movement, which is a religio-metaphysical healing cult. Quimby employed hypnosis as a means of healing, but discovered that he could also heal by suggestion. He held that all illness is basically a matter of the mind and that it results from the patient's mistaken beliefs. Hence, cure lies in discovering the truth. Although not religious in the orthodox sense, he believed he had discovered the healing methods of Jesus. Now, if you know anything about, the occult, or, you hear this term esoterics, you have eso, you have exo. Exo is the outer, eso is the inner. So esoteric simply means, inner knowledge. And so Quimby was one who believed that the Bible, for example, the Bible is only understood in its proper context by those who are sort of initiated in the mysteries, because the true gift that the Bible gives is not what it reveals to you on the surface, because the whole entire story is allegorical or metaphysical in nature. Because the purpose and the point of it all is so that man could discover the God within. So Quimby rebelled against old-style Calvinism, believing that its austere nature depressed people and caused what he called disease-inducing guilt. He disregarded conventional medicines and instead relied on positive thought to heal the body and to foster a clear mind. So let's back up. Let's go back to this disease-inducing guilt. You'll hear, again, this is the tradition, y'all. This is why I felt the need to focus on this, because us over here in this, particular space, we go back. This is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual battle. What happened to this, to the West and in America more specifically? What's going on? What happened to our church? What happened to our traditions? Excuse me. This reminds me when I read that, again, the Word of Faith movement is in the spirit of New Thought metaphysics. I didn't feel the need to dedicate a particular portion of this discussion to the Word of Faith movement because, again, I wanted to deal with this particular period in American history. But you all know who some of the prominent Word of Faith so-called healers are, right? I love when y'all know y'all boy Benny Hinn. Y'all see Benny Hinn when he got his little thing and he got all the folks and he be taking off his coat and he be swinging his jacket and everybody be passing out. So yeah, that's Word of Faith. Or someone say like Bishop T.D. Jakes and Pastor Osteen. You all have seen that popular. I've seen it a bunch of times, and a lot of people make reels and clips and stuff about it. But your boy Joel Osteen, I forgot who it was. Somebody asked him. Well, I don't know if he was talking to Oprah. I can't remember, but people criticize you, Pastor Osteen. Rick Warren, he's another one. People criticize you, Pastor Osteen, Creflo Dollar. Y'all know who they are. Anyway, I'm sorry. Why don't you talk enough? Why don't you speak enough about sin and salvation, Pastor Osteen? People say that you have this sort of feel good ministry, and what did Pastor Osteen say? You all seen the clip. People know that they're sinners. People know. I don't feel the need to keep telling them over and over again and say, people know that they're bad. They need to be, So you don't want to make people feel guilty. So don't tell them that they're sinners. They get enough of that. Right, so that's the philosophy, I guess, what do you call it, philosophy of Joel Osteen. They hear enough of that. Yeah, they don't know how. Stop telling people how bad they are. They're tired of that. So again, Word of Faith is in the spirit of New Thought metaphysics. Elements of New Thought may be traced to Platonism, based on the idealism of the 5th and 4th century BCE Greek philosopher Plato, who held that the realm of forms, or what he called ideas, are more real than that of matter. Now, let me take a pause real quick to explain Plato and his philosophy of the forms. Plato believed that the physical world was merely an expression of this sort of essence of true things. So, for example, like I'm sitting at a table, right? This table isn't really a table. It's just an expression of tableness. Because beyond the realm of the physical senses or the tangible, the sensible world, lie the realm of ideas or forms, which inform the physical world. The metaphysical world finds expression in the physical world, but only expression. Not real things. I'll put it like this. I don't want to talk about a table, right? Let's talk about, and mind you, many kind of things, real things can intersect, not intersectionality in that sense, guys, but can intersect. Like, for example, this table, you all may not be able to see it, but it's flat, it's brown, it's hard. These are all characteristics of the table, right? But to try to drive it home, look at it like how we view attractiveness or how we view beauty. Plato believed that beauty was a thing, a consciousness as itself. When we look at someone or something that is beautiful, it isn't beautiful in the truest sense of what it means to be beautiful. It is merely expressing the essence of true beauty. But true beauty is transcendent. True beauty goes beyond the senses. And this is when you get, with the ancient Greeks or whatever, they began to personify these concepts in their pantheistic sort of the pantheistic culture of ancient Greece, I guess, dictated that various gods and goddesses control certain aspects of the human experience. So you may have the god of beauty, the god of war, the god of this, the god of that. And so the real things, beauty as it truly exists, was personified in the image or how they communicate the mythologies of their various gods and goddesses and what have you. So to Plato, the physical world wasn't real in that way. The true goal and point and purpose of the philosopher is to try and find the transcendent, meaning the reality of life itself. To find the reality, you must find the objective. There's one thing, there's something that is going to be truly beautiful to everyone, because true beauty as it exists in its truest form is not subject to the whims of man's perception. It is beauty personified. I hope I hope that made sense. If not, again, whatever, y'all, study Plato, when you get a chance. It's very interesting. From Plato's forms to something called Swedenborgianism or Swedenborgianism. This is a particular brand of philosophy named after Emanuel Swedenborg. This was especially true of Swedenborg's view that the material realm is one of effects whose causes are spiritual and whose purpose is divine. Sort of like Plato in a sense. From Swedenborgianism to Hegelianism. There you go again. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel seems to pop up in all of my research. To Hegelianism. And Hegelianism is based on the views of the 18th, 19th century German philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, especially those concerning the external world, mental phenomena, and the nervous organism as the meeting ground of the body and the mind. To the spiritual teachings of certain Eastern religions, i.e. Hinduism, and particularly to the transcendentalism, a form of idealism, of the 19th century American philosopher and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm not going to get into Ralph Waldo Emerson, but I just thought I'd mention him again. This is the whole foundation of the New Thought movement. Now, I'm just going to briefly read from something called the Quimby manuscripts. Now, the Quimby manuscripts are a collection of Phineas Quimby's writings. Again, you can go and buy it online, but you don't even have to. I think it's online to view for free. The Quimby manuscripts were edited and compiled by a man named I have it written down here. Horatio Dresser. Horatio Dresser was the son of a man who was one of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby's followers. He was a devout follower of Quimby, and Dresser wanted to, I don't know if it was in I guess a gesture, sort of kind of paying him homage to his father, or perhaps he was a follower of Quimby himself. I'm not quite sure if Horatio Dresser ever met Quimby, but his father was a devout follower of Quimby. So again, I didn't feel the need to go into any biographical information regarding Horatio Dresser, but again, he is the one who edited the Quimby manuscripts. This was published in 1991. I'm just going to read to you some excerpts from What Up King Tabernacle. I'm just going to read to you some excerpts from Quimby's manuscripts just to give you an idea of the man and what was going on in his mind. This is Phineas Quimby remarking on what he called mesmerism. Again, he used mesmerism and hypnosis to heal the sick. And again, he believed that he had harnessed the healing power of Jesus. This is Quimby. God is the great mesmerizer or magnet. He speaks man or the idea into existence. He attaches his senses to the idea, and we are to ourselves just what we think we are. So man is a mesmerized subject. They are to themselves matter. You may have as many subjects as you will, and they are all in the same relation to each other as they would be in the state we call waking. So, this is proof that we are affected by one another, sometimes independently and sometimes governed by others, but always retaining our own identity with all our ideas of matter and subject to all its changes, as real as it is in the natural or waking state. I bet y'all didn't even understand what the hell I just read, because I didn't. Wackadoo, crazy stuff, right? That's Quimby. This is also Quimby on spirit and matter. I'm going to read again. Quimby. There are two ideas, one spirit and one matter. When you speak of man, you speak of matter. When you speak of spirit, you speak of the knowledge that will live after the matter is destroyed or dead. This is the Christian's wisdom. With God in all the above is only opinions of ideas without any wisdom from God or truth. All the above is embraced in his idea as an illusion that contains no life, but lives, moves, has its being in identity, and is wisdom. So that to itself it is living, moving something without power to act, to create, and destroy. Its happiness and misery are in itself. So when its shadow is destroyed to A and C, he is dead. A loses nothing but is the same as before. But to B and C, he is dead. So the shadow is the medium of truth and error. To error, it is matter, but to truth, it is an illusion. Oh, man. So, again, y'all, this is the kind of stuff, that we're dealing with. This is the folks who, throw terms around like, I'm trying to pick up on, vibes and all this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I get it, y'all. I understand, you feel vibes, right? You walk into a room and you could kind of sense when something ain't right. You you could feel when somebody was, may have just been talking about you. It's like, man, I walk into a room and all of a sudden everybody get quiet. Man, was y'all just talking about me? But sometimes you just got to feel it. When you leave the house in the morning and you're like, dang, did I lock the door? I feel like, man, and you're so used to doing the same thing over and over again, all the days kind of linked together. So you don't have a clear-cut memory of what you did when you left the house that morning because you do the same thing every day. But it's like, dang, I got a feeling I didn't close the garage door. Something ain't right. So you feel it. I'm not saying that anybody who talk about, man, I got a feeling, it don't mean you evil or wicked. But I'm just saying, you need to put these things in perspective and have some context, like my boy Blanche Robinson would say, because, a lot of this stuff has become, it's become a pillar of American culture. Anyway, so let's go on. So again, vibes and manifesting and all of that stuff. What are we really talking about? I mentioned a woman named Mary Baker Eddy. What up, Neil? Now we're going to get into Mary Baker Eddy. Mary Baker Eddy was a former patient of Quimby who founded the Christian Science movement. She was born on July 16th, 1821, near Concord, New Hampshire, and she died in the U.S. on December 3rd, 1910, in Chess Hill, Massachusetts. Okay, now I think I may have put this in my summary, so I may be repeating myself here, but people accuse Eddy of taking and stealing Quimby's work, taking his research and calling it something else. But when you dive into Mary Baker Eddy, those who support Mary Baker Eddy say that her work was distinctively different from Quimby's. But, again, I let them argue amongst themselves because this is all heretical if you ask me. In 1870, she taught her first Christian science class based on her work, The Science of Man by Which the Sick Are Healed, or it's also known as, or Questions and Answers on Moral Science. This was published in 1870. And she attracted a following in the mill town of Lynn, Massachusetts, near Boston, where she remained until 1882. In 1875, she published Science and Health, which she repeatedly revised over the next 35 years. In 1879, Eddy and a group of 15 followers founded the Church of Christ Science. In 1908, she launched the Christian Science Monitor, a leading international newspaper, and to this date, the recipient of 7 Pulitzer Prizes. I mentioned that earlier. Christian Science subscribes to the Christian belief in an omnipotent, purposeful God, accepts the authority, though not the errancy, of the Bible. So the Bible does have flaws, and holds the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus Christ to be indispensable to the redemption of humankind. That's going to be key. Remember that. Christian Science dictates that that the redemption of humankind and the crucifixion of Christ, or the crucifixion of Christ, is indispensable with the redemption of humankind. But it departs from traditional Christianity in rejecting the deity, but not the divinity of Jesus, seeing his life as exemplifying a divine sonship that belongs to all men and women as God's children. The denomination is thus usually regarded as non-Trinitarian. Unlike some forms of liberal Protestantism, however, Christian Science does not view Jesus as simply a moral exemplar. Rather, his healing works and his victory over death are regarded as proof that the limitations of the mortal state can be overcome incrementally as one gains the mind of Jesus. That is an understanding of humanity's true spiritual status. So, again, so the whole thing when it comes to esoterics is all about. Those who adhere to esoteric doctrine believe that the point of religion and the whole concept, the orthodox concept of God, is to keep the secrets of man's true power and his true nature from you. Again, I think I put one biblical passage in here because y'all know, I'll say it 1,000 times, I'm not a biblical scholar, I'm not an expert. But I am a historian, and this is history. I'm telling you guys, okay? This sounds eerily similar to, again, what led to the fall of man. This belief that man could attain some kind of elevated spiritual status by obtaining the mind of Christ. This attainment requires looking beyond material appearance to a spiritual reality that Orthodox Christianity associates with heaven, but Christian Science considers to be a demonstrable fact. This is a demonstrable fact. So we can prove it here in the physical. And the fact that Jesus Christ died and was bodily, ascended in a bodily form, well, then this is proof that human beings, those of us who are not Jesus, there is some hidden truth. There is something that we can tap into. And then that's when you start getting into the occult interpretations of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion. That, Jesus Christ being crucified between two thieves, and the two thieves represent the nature of the material world, which is the nature of oscillation, vibration, and polarity. Jesus Christ being crucified between the two thieves were symbolic of the physical eye, but the so-called third eye is what you see with your spiritual eye, is when you overcome the material world and bring the polarities into balance with the crucifixion of Christ. This is why Christ was crucified where? Calvary, or Golgotha, which is where? The skull. Jesus Christ was crucified at the skull. I'm just telling you what these occultists teach. I'm not saying I agree with it, and I'm not saying you should adhere to it, but this is what they teach. The crucifixion of Jesus is about man's ascension into something beyond what he thinks he is. And only those who are trained, again, in the hidden knowledge knows the hidden meanings and the hidden truths. Mary Baker Eddy, she was also considered to be one of our country's earliest feminists. Now, when I looked over some of Edie's writings and some of her opinions about feminism and everything else, she wasn't a feminist in the sense that we understand feminism today. And I'm not saying that her views on sex and sexuality were correct. I mean, it's clear. I mean, she's the founder of Christian Science. So you hear the crazy stuff that I'm talking about here. Obviously, the woman had some issues, okay? But she, anyway. But yeah, it's worthwhile looking to Mary Baker Eddy and her ideas and her thoughts, because, again, the feminists are trying to say that she was one of them. She was one of our country's earliest feminists, again, because of her opinions about women and their position in the church and everything else. But again, I didn't put that down on my summary. I just have here explain feminism. So I'm just going off the top of my head, but it's worthwhile looking into. So let's move on. The New Thought movement of the 19th century proceeded the New Age movement. Now, this is according to Dewey D. Wallace Jr., a professor of religion at George Washington University. Of New Age, says Wallace, New Age has an awful lot of similarities. When he's talking about similarities, he's talking about similarities to New Thought, especially mind over matter principles. New Agers, though, incorporate channeling, crystals, astrology, etc. in their spiritual practices. Now, here's the key difference between New Age and so-called New Thought or Christian Science. Christian Science and New Thought, regardless of how you feel about their interpretation of Scripture and the life of Jesus and everything else, there is, Jesus and Christianity still has a place in their whole thing. As far as New Age, according to Dr. Dewey D. Wallace Jr., New Age doesn't even consider the divinity of Christ. Christianity is of no consequence. When I was because I like to peruse through Dr. Sean McDowell's YouTube channel from time to time, and I've heard him talk to, these so-called witches and psychics and what have you, who, give their testimonies about how they gave their life over to Christ and gave up the occult. But they talk about how, when you open yourself up to that spiritual realm, I suppose, what you are in fact doing, and I heard this come out of the mouth of a reformed psychic. She said that what you are doing is that you are opening yourself up to demons. She calls them demons. Because she talks about how the Bible tells you to put your faith in God and Jesus and nothing else, and so on and so forth. And so she said that if you're a psychic, you're channeling, you're doing tarot cards and all that stuff. She said that, again, she lived in perpetual fear because, essentially, like, she opened herself up, playing with Ouija boards and all that. She, demons and wicked and evil spirits, she claims, began to sort of like haunt her. So she says that what New Agers will tell you to do is use sage and crystals and all this kind of stuff to try and protect yourself from these demons. But of course, as a born again Christian, she says the only thing that drove away these demons was God, was Jesus. But they tell you to do all these things as a means to protect yourself from these wicked, evil spirits that you're opening yourself up to. Again, y'all. Y'all know, this is probably new. I don't know how many of these kind of discussions I'm going to do. I don't know if y'all enjoying it. Y'all probably come here to hear me talk about communism, Marxism like I do. And I can, to be continued. But again, y'all, and it's funny because I tried to have this done by Easter, but didn't happen. Christian Science was not without its orthodox critics. Now we finna get into it, y'all. Now we about to get into it. What's up, Shara? Am I saying it right? Shara? Christian Science was not without its orthodox critics. For example, Theosophists believed that Christian Science healings were not spiritual, but rather resulted from ignorant application of the powers of the human mind. So there's nothing really spiritual about it. This was kind of like man, his own will. The most prominent theosophist of the day, and I'm going to reveal who she was, and if you're familiar with this content, you know who she was. So don't spoil it in the comment section down on Instagram. I'm just playing. Y'all can go ahead. The most prominent theosophist of the day said once to the American Theosophical Convention in 1890 that, quote, "Understand once and for all that there is nothing spiritual or divine in any of these manifestations." He's talking about Christian Science. "The cures affected by them are due simply to the unconscious exercise of occult power on the lower planes of nature." People look at Theosophy and Christian Science as being one and the same. Again, these are kind of deviations from, sort of Orthodox Christianity, and you had, this kind of liberal Protestantism, and then, you gave birth to New Thought, Christian Science, and now we're into this thing called Theosophy. Edie rejected this notion. She would clap back at her critics. Edie rejected this notion by claiming Theosophy was plainly Brahmanism and esoteric Buddhism, blended with its own sort of various magical incantations and enchantments. Again, Mary Baker Eddy is holding fast to the notion that what she is doing is exclusively and uniquely Christian. What she is claiming, the charge that she is leveling at Theosophy is that Theosophy is merely just bastardized Brahmanism and esoteric Buddhism. Eddy would remark to one of her students who began to suggest a link between the two practices that, quote, unless Christian scientists practice a pure Christianity, Christian Science would disappear and be replaced by the schools of Gnosticism and Theosophy. I got that quote directly from the Mary Baker Eddy Library, and you can go and look at the Mary Baker Eddy Library on the internet at marybakeredylibrary.org. Again, she accused them of being pretty much Gnostics, Brahmins, and esoteric Buddhists. If you want to practice Christian Science, it has to be a kind of pure Christianity. So what is Theosophy? Theosophy was an occult movement originating in the 19th century with roots in Gnosticism and Neoplatonism. The term Theosophy derived from the Greek theos, which means God, and Sophia, which means wisdom. Y'all probably knew that. And it is generally understood to mean divine wisdom. Divine wisdom. Theosophical writers hold that there is a deeper spiritual reality and that direct contact with that reality can be established through initiation, meditation, revelation, or some other state transcending normal human consciousness. You know, and drugs and everything else became a huge part of it. Again, I didn't want to focus on the 60s because all of this stuff, the 60s was the sort of the flowering, the mainstream acceptance of everything that I'm talking about here. You hear folks today, you know, with this, DMTs and taking all these drugs, and Joe Rogan and all these folks are telling you, man, it'll elevate your mind and you see, you know, whatever, see beyond the veil. This is how you transcend a normal human consciousness. You must alter the state of human consciousness. I don't know about y'all, but I don't fool around with none of that. I think I hit the blunt like one time in my life. I ain't never did no. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I don't get high. None of that. I was always too afraid because this whole altered state of human consciousness stuff frightens me. I don't know about y'all. Some folk run to it. They want to see what's out there. I'm good. I'm good, man. Don't give me nothing, man. Don't give me nothing. Modern theosophists claim that all world religions contain such an inner teaching, and much attention is devoted to deciphering the meaning of concealed sacred text. Now, I put here, again, in parentheses for myself as a reminder to explain Black theosophy. You hear these folk, you know them out there, I always think about, Brother Polite and what's some of the other names out there? Shaka Amos and what's the other one? Young Pharaoh and a lot of these characters, Sarah Seti. A lot of them, even some of the older ones who influenced them, like say Reverend Phil Valentine, Bobby Hemmett, Dr. Dilbert Blair. I can go on and on and on. The reason why there's this Afrocentric tinge to what they're talking about is, again, they kind of build on the back of the scholarship of Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinet and Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. Because, again, if you have this belief and understanding that the Black man was the first man, you see, everything that exists in the world deviates from that primary cause of the sort of flourishing of human culture. And so, to the Black theosophists, those who are obsessed with ancient Kemet, all the dudes walking around with the ankhs and all of that stuff, these guys believe that religion, in its sort of in the sense of the sort of Western tradition, this is why they preach and sort of perpetuate the exoteric expression of these sacred texts. But see, the Black man or our job is to find that, that hidden inner meaning of these bastardized texts, because everything that is, all the things that are of prominence in the Western world, of course, was stolen from the ancient Africans, who were, of course, black. And we're going to get more into that. This is why I talk about, your third eye, your pineal gland, and your melanin, and all of that stuff. We're going to get into that. Again, they themselves will accuse folks like Mary Baker Eddy and Phineas Quimby. They will accuse them, the folks that I just named, will accuse them of stealing the secrets from the ancient masters, who were black, of course. This is, all this stuff, the white man is just trying to use powers that he doesn't understand. Now, the contemporary Theosophical movement was born with the founding of the Theosophical Society in New York in 1875. Now, who was the founder of the Theosophical Society? That is none other than Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, also known as Madame Blavatsky. Y'all know who she is. Y'all heard her name before. If you study this stuff, you've come across Madame Blavatsky. We're going to get into Madame Blavatsky. She was born August 12th, 1831 in Ukraine. I got the city. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this word. Yekaterinoslav, Ukraine. At this time, of course, Ukraine was a part of the Russian Empire. And she died in Ukraine on May 8th, 1891. No, I'm sorry. She died in London, England on May 8th, 1891. But she was born in the Russian Empire in a part of Ukraine in 1831. She was a Russian spiritualist, author, and co-founder of the Theosophical Society to promote Theosophy, which was a pantheistic philosophical religious system. According to the Theosophical Society of America on their website, theosophical.org, you can go and read it. Helena Blavatsky was born of a noble family in Russia. From her earliest childhood, she attracted attention with her ability of producing psychic phenomena at will. Yet, she was not interested in such powers for her own sake, but for the principles of laws of nature that govern them. H.P. Blavatsky devoted her life to the service of humanity, to bringing the wisdom of the ancients back to the awareness of her contemporaries. Of course, the ancients were the people of ancient Kim. That's not, anyway. I'll get to that because I got a special section devoted to you Negroes. That divine wisdom, which she called Theosophy, inspires a compassion for the suffering of her fellow human beings and for a practical altruism that seeks not merely to alleviate the symptoms of misery, but to remove its cause, which is ignorance of our fundamental unity with all things. Helena Blavatsky's life and works are directed entirely to that goal. So again, with the occultists, you see, you hear all this talk about God being all things and God being this and that. Well, a Christian worldview, a Judeo-Christian worldview, would suggest that, of course, that the God of the universe exists outside of time, space, matter, etc. But see, what she's saying here, when she talks about the fundamental unity, that's what she's talking about. The fundamental unity of all things, in essence, is God itself. Again, I didn't even focus on the Kabbalah. I could have, y'all know, it's so much. It's again, I didn't want to be here for 4 or 5 hours. I ain't even gonna be able to upload this on YouTube. It's gonna take about 8-9 hours just for the dang on file to upload, because it's probably gonna be pretty long here because I got a 7-page summary that I'm trying to get through. But if you understand Kabbalah and the movements from the kingdom of Malkuth all the way up to the Ein Sof, anyway, God is all. God as all is ignorant of itself, because God cannot know itself until it contracts from itself to become distinctive things. That's how God gets into the knowledge of itself is through its own negation. God as a whole is conscious as itself, but not of itself. This is quintessentially Hegelian. Going back to what I said earlier about Friedrich Hegel's influence on this entire movement. So God is not separate from me. I am my own mini God, having an experience as a person called Chuck. And so are all of you. And the goal is to get back to that understanding, to climb back up Jacob's ladder to reach the level of the aim. Man, I'm going off of the top of the dome with a lot of this stuff, y'all, because again, you know, people always come at me. They like, Chuck, man, you don't understand, man. You man, you don't know, bruh, what's really going on, and and all you talk about is Republican, Democrat. Listen, y'all, there's a time and a place, okay? There's a time and a place. But again, the reason why I felt it important to talk about this, because again, this particular spiritual view, this worldview, has a certain kind of politics attached to it. That's the whole point. Peter Washington, who is the author of a book titled Madame Blavatsky's Baboon, subtitled A History of the Mystics, Mediums, and Misfits Who Brought Spiritualism to America, which was published in 1996, said of Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky relates to the New Age movement today because she challenged the established order of Christianity. There is a reason why, and I didn't dedicate a portion of this discussion to Aleister Crowley. I spoke about Aleister Crowley a while back when I did my talk, Communism and Homosexuality. It's worth a perusal. Perusal, is that the word? But a lot of folks who have these kind of wayward, wackadoo spiritual outlooks, they tend to, again, if you have a non-traditionalist view in terms of, you know, your spirituality or your conception of God, well then, you know, your political outlook is going to mirror that. Again, and it's not always the case. And I know I'm probably going to lose a couple followers after this, because I know this because I go through my list of the people that follow me from time to time, and I see a lot of y'all. I read y'all bios. You know, you got a lot of astrology enthusiasts and folks who are into this kind of stuff who are, I guess, you know, conservative as far as their worldview are concerned. But again, you have to understand and take into account everything that is taking place, because this stuff is not to be taken for granted. This is serious. This is serious. Aleister Crowley had a lot of buddies and friends who were a part of the communist movement, who were communist sympathizers. Was Aleister Crowley a communist? I don't know. At this particular moment, I haven't come across anything that would suggest that. But again, he did have a close, personal, and intimate wink-wink relationship with Walter Duranty. Again, don't mean to get off into a tangent about Aleister Crowley, but again, these folk, again, have, you know, some very strange bedfellows in the political space. And again, that is not to be taken for granted or ignored. So again, this is about challenging Christianity. It's an essential feature of the New Age that it's always in opposition. It's always somehow anti-establishment. This is according to author Peter Washington. She became a model for the Build Your Own Religion school. That's a quote. This was something that Blavatsky translated into action. Again, the New Age, New Thought, Theosophical spiritual movement was essentially this kind of anti-establishment position or posture. It is an unwillingness to submit to that in exchange for this, because a certain brand of politics comes along with everything that I'm talking about. Blavatsky would also go on to co-found a monthly journal called Lucifer that was published from September 1887 until August of 1887 until August of 1897. The paper's slogan was to bring to light the hidden things of darkness. Now pause, because we're gonna get into this. Again, y'all, Lucifer was the title of her paper. I just read its slogan, right? Lucifer. Lucifer, Lucifer, Lucifer. What is it about Lucifer, and what is this? What is this thing when we start talking about Lucifer? I know I'm probably preaching to the choir because a lot of y'all are probably hip to this. It ain't rocket science. So we're gonna spend a brief moment right now to just sort of deconstruct this concept of Lucifer and the word Lucifer, the root word lux or lux. What does that mean? We're gonna get into it. In the Latin, the main forms are lux or lucis, Lucius. Its translations are light of the suns or stars. What do we know about Lucifer? And the Bible tells us what? That Lucifer is the what? The light bringer or the light bearer. When you look up at the sky right before dawn, you can literally see the planet Venus with the physical eye. That's the planet Lucifer, is the planet. Lucifer is the planet Venus. Venus rises before the sun. It brings forth the dawn. The Greeks had their own name for Venus, which was a goddess in the Greek pantheon that they referred to as Phosphorus, which meant the bringer of the dawn. Again, light, suns, stars. In the Greek, the word lux derived a unit of illuminance or illumination. 1 lumen per square meter. So 1 lumen per square meter equals a lux. In the Latin, again, I guess like Spanish, French, whatever, they have, gender, because we think of gender as this thing when we're talking, LGBT, transgenderism, whatever. But of course, gender is a linguistic, it is a etymological phenomena. Gender was something that was once confined to the realm of the study of language and words. This whole concept that gender and sex are two separate things, no. That was something, of course, that this concept that the neo-Marxists borrowed from French linguists like Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault. This was when postmodernism became popular in the United States around 1920s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So this idea that gender is a social construct and sex is a biological construct, that was never the case, because gender had nothing to do with human identity whatsoever. This was etymological in nature. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because the word lux, meaning light, sun, or of the sun or stars, is a feminine word. The gender of the term lux is feminine. This is why the Greeks personified the planet Venus and with their goddess Phosphorus, and the goddess Phosphorus, well, here's the term goddess again. God is masculine, goddess is feminine. Phosphorus is a goddess because the word lux is feminine. Again, I'm not an etymologist. I don't understand etymology. It's a bit above my pay grade, but I'm just kind of trying to give you all the basics. This is why, Venus, again, the goddess Venus is depicted as female because Lucifer is essentially female. So when these occult, whatever, and this, they'll say, well, this is why, symbolically, the snake appeared to Eve first, because Eve is, again, Eve as the sort of she is the religious or spiritual sort of archetype of the sort of Luciferian principle. So so Eve sort of precipitated with her rebellion the fall of man, so that or why it was Eve and not Adam is because, again, Lucifer as a concept is feminine. And I suppose like God is in essence masculine. And so again, occultists would have you believe that, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second. So again, when you look at the word lux or loose, lust, L-U-C, see it in the words. I'm going to go through a few words like lucid. Lucid, meaning what? Expressed clearly or easy to understand. Second definition, bright or luminous. The root word lux means, again, light, brightness, clarity. Examples: to make things easier to understand. Pellucid, translucent to the eye or easy for the mind to understand. Elucidate, to make easier to understand by giving more relevant information. Translucent, an object that allows some light to pass through. Lucidity, free from obscurity or easy to understand. And translucent, the quality of allowing light to pass diffusely. This is why occultists always, because see, again, Lucifer brings enlightenment. Lucifer brings illumination. Lucifer brings clarity and understanding. God is ignorant. God wants you ignorant. God wants you stupid. God wants you to believe in him. God wants you to put your faith in him. No, place your faith in Lucifer, because Lucifer is trying to save you and redeem you from your ignorance. Lucifer is trying to redeem you from your perfection so that you can gain the knowledge of the gods. This is the Promethean fire. Prometheus was bound and chained to a rock for giving fire to humanity. People always say, it's not about whether or not the Bible is true. People rarely ask, well, what exactly does it mean? This is why Lucifer is the hero Lucifer is the hero of the story, because Lucifer brings clarity. Again, I'm just telling you what they think. This is what Madame Blavatsky thought. This is what they think. This is what they teach. Again, Lucifer is feminine in nature. Look at our society today. See what happens when we give ourselves over to that feminine energy. Again, terms like luck, Lucius, Luther, derived from this very concept. I'll give you another example. You know, people always love to sort of, it's funny. People love to try to decode movies and symbols and commercials. And y'all see that? Y'all see that? Yeah, he did like this and he did that. And you see that? They're trying to tell us something, man. So, like the movie Star Wars, right? Let's talk about the Force and this and that. And so, when you look at, let's say, people say, George Lucas, he's an occultist. He got all this. Now, I don't know, George Lucas, he may be into the occult. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me. But again, I ain't talking about this new Star Wars stuff, but the original Star Wars trilogy, who is the primary protagonist of the story? Of course, it is Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker. You see, according to ancient Egyptian mythology, when you look at the 12 disciples and the 12 labors of Hercules and so on and so forth, when at noon, those are the day hours. Night, right? You have night and you have day. You have the night sky and you have the day sky. I guess, I don't want to get it wrong, because those who are experts in the occult gonna try to come for me. But again, it's something. Lucifer or the devil governs the night sky and God governs the day sky. But it may be vice versa. But when the sun breaches the horizon, as in the god Horus in ancient Egypt, every hour symbolizes a step. So you have 12 day hours, 12 night hours. So each hour is a step. So the sun is the light, in this case, not so much the star Venus, but the light of the sun is the quote unquote Skywalker. So what you're seeing with the Star Wars movie is, again, this worship of the sun. And you see the main protagonist and, with the dark side. And anyway, that's like little fun stuff. Y'all can go into the little corners and far reaches of the internet. You can find people getting into all that stuff. Whether or not it's true, what is George Lucas trying to communicate, some kind of a whatever, I'll leave that up to y'all's imagination. But I'm simply saying all that to say that these people really believe this stuff. And this is the one scripture that I put in here. This is, of course, Revelations chapter 22, verse 16. I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David. I am the bright and morning star. So a lot of folks say, and I've heard people say this, I've heard occultists say this, that Lucifer and Jesus are one and the same. They're the same deity. They're like the evil twin of Set and Osir, or Seth, which is, I guess, one of the Egyptian forms of Satan or the devil, Set and Osir. They are dual aspects of the same thing. So Lucifer, in fact, is really Jesus in disguise and vice versa. This is what they believe. I have here the Satanic Bible of Anton Sandor LaVey. Chuck, why you got this, man? It's gonna burn your hand. No, this ain't got no power. It ain't got no power over me. It's just paper. But we gonna get into it. I've had this book for a long time because I said, okay, y'all talking about, I want to know. I want to know what's on the enemy's mind. I want to know what he got to say. Let's see here. Y'all want to hear what Anton Sandor LaVey had to say? Because it reminds me of something, right? In this here, he says, the Roman god Lucifer was the bearer of light, the spirit of the air, the personification of enlightenment. In Christian mythology, he became synonymous with evil, which was only to have been expected from a religion whose very existence is perpetuated by clouded definitions and bogus values. It is time to set the record straight. False moralisms and occult inaccuracies must be corrected. Entertaining as they may be, most stories and plays about devil worship must be recognized as the obsolete absurdities that they are. It has been said that the truth will make men free. The truth alone has never set men free. It is only doubt which will bring mental emancipation. What he's talking about doubt of the true and living God, the God of the Bible, of Christ. That's what he's talking about. Anton Sandor LaVey. I could go on, and again, y'all can see here the highlights, the markings. I've actually read this. I think I've read it more than once. But again, I won't get too deep into Anton Sandor LaVey because, again, I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I possibly can. I know y'all probably getting bored. In 1877, Blavatsky released her most well-known book. This is sort of like her magnum opus, her most well-known book, a 2-volume piece titled Isis Unveiled. Here is an excerpt from which she summarizes the concept of man. What is this? I brought a lot of books here today, y'all. This here, y'all familiar with this? This is The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. This is one of the books that, again, if you want to study the occult for the purpose of knowledge, again, I would not suggest you become a practitioner, but you do what you want to do, but you're going to have to answer for that. But if you want to learn about what the occult is about and what they are teaching, this book here is a must-have. I'm going to go to The Secret Teachings of All Ages. I'm going to read an excerpt from Madame Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled. Here is Madame Blavatsky's concept of man. Man is a little world, a microcosm inside the great universe. Like a fetus, he is suspended by all his 3 spirits in the matrix of the macros, and while his terrestrial body is in constant sympathy with its parent Earth, his astral soul lives in unison with the sahedral anima mundi. He is in it as it is in him, for the world-pervading elements fills all space and is space itself, only shoreless and infinite. That's just some of what Madame Blavatsky had to say about the concept of man. Again, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And I got more books, and I'm going to show y'all. Now, my boy Neil said, no, far from bored, bro. The Hodgkins report the Hodgson report is a report. It was the findings of an investigation in 1885 by the London Society for Psychical Research. No, let me backtrack. Let me read that. I'm not reading it correctly. The Hodgson's report, or maybe I just typed it wrong. Let's see. The Hodgson's report, the findings of an investigation in 1885 by the London Society of Psychical Research declared Blavatsky a fraud. There you go. The report was conducted by Richard Hodgson. Hodgson was a member of the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research, and a research worker of paranormal phenomena. He was sent to India to complete a study of Blavatsky's claims. Part of Hodgson's task was to examine if the mode of appearance attributed to the Mahatma letters represented genuine psychical phenomena. Now, by this time, Blavatsky was living in India because she would travel all over the world and do her thing, but she was in India at this point. In December 1884, Hodgson's arrived in Adyar. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, if there's anybody in India from India or know how to pronounce this word. He eventually concluded that the evidence supported Emma Column's account, her claims. Now, who is Emma Colum? Emma Colum was Madame Blavatsky's housekeeper. And that various inconsistencies, misrepresentations, and provable falsehoods in sworn statements by certain Theosophical Society members destroyed their credibility. So at some point, Emma Holcomb got pissed off. She had a falling out with Madame Blavatsky, and she said, I'm going to tell everybody what you've been doing. You're a liar and a fraud. You ain't got no special powers. This is all bullshit. He included in his research examination of the psychical in the physical spaces where phenomena had been reported, including the architectural features that had been concealed or removed from their original placements. Hodgson wrote a 200-page report in which Blavatsky was described as a, quote, one of the most accomplished, ingenious, and interesting imposters in history. Now, during Blavatsky's travels, of course, there were two individuals in particular who were students and mentees of hers. Two of them, one named Charles Leadbeater and Anna Besant. There's another individual by the name of Sir Francis Younghusband. Sir Francis Younghusband was big in the pushing in the 19th century of the occult. I didn't feel the need to get into Francis Younghusband, but again, y'all, if y'all are interested, look up a man by the name of Sir Francis Younghusband. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So while in India, Madame Blavatsky, or more so, should I say, Charles Leadbeater and Anna Besant met a young boy. Do you all know? Okay, when we're talking about India, right? Who am I about to talk about now? Who was one of the most famous sort of spiritualists to ever come out of India? He's so well known that he merely goes by one name. And that person, of course, is Judah Krishnamurti. It was Charles Leadbeater and Anna Besant who discovered Krishnamurti. And I'm going to spend a brief time talking about Krishnamurti. Again, eventually we're going to get to just to kind of keep y'all locked in, because y'all probably like, well, what does this got to really do with me? But just to keep y'all locked in, we're going to eventually get to the Nation of Islam. So just bear with me because we're almost there. Who is Judah Krishnamurti? He was born in 1895 in India, a city or state town called or province. I don't know how they geographically speaking, how they designate their spaces, but a place called Madanapalli, India. He was born there in 1895, and he died in Ojai, California, in 1986. In Ojai, California, California as a whole became it was just a melting ground. It was just, it was a cesspool of all of this kind of stuff, particularly by the 1960s, 1970s. Of course, y'all know that. And men like Charles Manson listen, y'all. And y'all know that Charles Manson heavily influenced, again, the Weather Underground. The Weather Underground, y'all know who the Weather Underground are, right? The Weather Underground, you know what the Weather Underground, their symbol was, right? Their symbol was the four-finger salute. The four-finger salute. Not because they like wrestling, they was into the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard and the crew. Nah, the four-finger salute stood for four forks. What's the significance of the four forks? The four forks symbolize the four forks that were placed in the stomach of geez, why am I forgetting her name? The woman that was killed at Roman Polanski's mansion, his wife or girlfriend who was pregnant at the time with his child. Why am I forgetting her name? Jesus. But yeah, that was the symbol of the Weather Underground. Co-founded, of course, by Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers, who were political allies of none other than Barack Hussein Obama. But the symbol of the Weather Underground was the four-finger salute because they had a love and appreciation and an admiration for the Manson family. Did y'all know that? Okay. You know now if you didn't. Because again, part of what the Weather Underground wanted to do, they wanted to facilitate a race war. And they thought that in order for white people to atone for their white skin privilege, they had to fight on the side of America's ethnic minorities and act as a fifth column within their own country. So the whole concept, the whole term of white privilege is nothing new. The radical left was throwing that term around back in the 1960s, and it was the Weather Underground that helped to popularize the concept of white privilege. So you had all this stuff going on. Again, all this stuff has a political consequence to it. Again, if y'all don't believe, look up the Weather Underground in the Manson family. The four-finger salute. Okay. He was an Indian spiritual healer. This is Krishnamurti. He was educated in Theosophy by British social reformer Anna Besant, who proclaimed him the coming world teacher, which is a messianic figure, who would bring about world enlightenment. Enlightenment, light, Lucifer, got it. Krishnamurti was discovered as a child in India by Charles W. Leadbeater, who prophesied that the then sickly and almost illiterate boy would become a great religious leader. From that point, Krishnamurti and his young brother Nitya were raised and educated by Theosophists at the Theosophical Society based in Andhra, Chennai, India. The Order of the Star in the East was established to promote the idea that Krishnamurti was going to be the vehicle of the world teacher, or Maitreya. Maitreya Buddha, or Metteyya Buddha, is regarded as the future Buddha of this world, or is regarded as the future Buddha of this world in Buddhist eschatology. So that's their kind of coming of Jesus. So Krishnamurti was to be this, but he died in 1986, and here we are, still just going right on down the toilet, right on down the tube. So I guess he wasn't what they thought he was. But it got to some point, Krishnamurti came to a point where he even began to reject this idea that he was somewhat special. And I'm going, and if I know what you're probably thinking, well, good. I'm glad he rejected that, right? But here's what Krishnamurti came to believe and came to think. I'm going to read a quote. This is a quote from Judah Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti, quote, "I maintain that truth is a," this is dangerous, y'all. Again, Krishnamurti is still, say Krishnamurti's name. Just look, y'all know who Judah Krishnamurti is. Let me stop beating this dead horse. But let me just read this quote so we can get y'all up out of here. "I maintain that truth is a pointless land, and you cannot approach it by any path whatsoever, by any religion, by any sect. That is my point of view, and I adhere to that absolutely and conditionally." So let me go back. I said, I'm sorry. I misread. He said you cannot approach it by any path whatsoever. I'm sorry. I meant to say you can. He believed that you could, in fact, approach truth by any path whatsoever. Let me issue that correction. I misread. He says, and I adhere to that absolutely and unconditionally. Truth being limitless, unconditional, unapproachable by any path whatsoever, cannot be organized, nor should any organization be formed to lead or coerce people along a particular path. So wait a minute. So how in the world can the truth be all these things without being a lie at the same time? It makes no sense. This is why I always get at people when they always talk about Chuck, about how I say this 1,000 times, about division. And division. See, that's what the devil seeks to do. I ain't going to get on my soapbox, y'all, and I ain't going to preach. But that's what the devil seeks to do. The devil seeks to obfuscate or obscure the line between right and wrong. This kind of anything goes mentality. This sort of uber relativism where it's all a matter and means of perspective. Well, how in the world are we supposed to have any sense of civility and stability in society if everybody is viewing the world from their own unique way? No, there is something or certain set of things that we should have in common, or else we inflict in grave harm upon one another because everybody is sort of clashing and just going about living life in the best way that they see fit. Well, that's not how it works. You're noticing some common themes with what Krishnamurti is saying here and the modern left. This is no magnificent deed because I do not want followers, and I mean this. The moment you follow someone, you cease to follow truth. I am not concerned whether you pay attention to what I say or not. I want to do a certain thing in the world, and I'm going to do it with unwavering concentration. I am concerning myself with only one essential thing: to set man free. I desire to free him from all cages, from all fears, and not to found religions, new sets, nor to establish new theories or new philosophies. So he wanted to just free man, free him from the chains, from the to unfasten him from silly fears and whatever else. Again, y'all, I don't need to deconstruct that, but that's Judah Krishnamurti. Here is a passage I'm going to read from. This is an article titled "Overrun with Messiahs: The Great Esoteric Awakening of the 1920s." This is an article written by a man named Philip Jenkins. This was published on June 11th. June 11th in 2021. He wrote this for a website titled Pathos. If you go on the website Pathos, this is a good website. It's almost like a database of articles and information regarding all of the world's major religions, Christianity, Buddha, all of it. I mean, it's a website worth going to just to kind of Anyway, so this is Philip Jenkins. I thought this was interesting and useful. So here's what he says. From at least the 1880s, esoteric ideas of all kinds were very strong indeed in the United States. And by the 1920s, they were in full flood. This was an era of multiple occult schools with interests in Asian religion, Rosicrucianism, lost continents, and esoteric versions of Christianity. Theosophy, which possessed a widespread network of lodges in North America, deserves much of the credit for popularizing yoga and associated Hindu ideas, as well as terms like karma, Mahatma, guru, and chula. Again, y'all, we hear people, man, that's karma, bro. He got what, man, that's bad karma. Again, go back to what I told you about the lady who, the reformed witch, who said, man, I got a problem with the way Christians just throw around these occult terms like it's just nothing. She doesn't like that. Again, I'm not gonna get on somebody from just using the word karma or heck, man, practicing yoga. I guess stretching and doing all that stuff is, what's wrong with stretching? I don't know. But again, y'all, I'm just putting it out there for y'all. This is what these concepts, this is where they come from. And so, now yoga is sort of like commonplace. I'm not saying we should shut all the yoga studios down, y'all. I'm not saying that. But again, I'm just providing y'all with the information. Y'all do with it what you will. The Theosophical tradition disseminated ideas like reincarnation and the ascended masters. Remember that term, ascended masters, who were enormously powerful spiritual beings of near-like God status. Boosting hopes of a coming new order was the notion of the Aquarian age. We getting somewhere. A phrase used much in these days. At different historical eras, the sun is located in different houses of the zodiac. each of which is believed by astrologers to determine the character of those particular centuries. Near the birth of Jesus, the sun entered the sign of Pisces. Of course, this is why Jesus Christ is symbolized as a fish. This is what they believe. And the next 2,000 years were dominated by the religion of Christianity, whose earliest symbol was a fish. Repeat myself. During the 20th century, the sun would enter a new house, that of Aquarius. And then also, you hear folks who practice the occult, and they talk about how the sign of Aquarius was borrowed from the Greek pantheon, of course. And this in the age of Aquarius, and the sign of Aquarius is, of course, symbolic of the Greek story or legend of Ganymede. Y'all familiar with that? I believe I'm pronouncing it right. Y'all know about the story of Ganymede, and how Ganymede was used as a sexual plaything of the gods. Ganymede was raped by Zeus. And this is why you have a lot of folks saying, this is why all this homosexuality and transgenderism stuff is breaking out, because we're going into the Aquarian age. This is the age of Ganymede. Ganymede was a child who was a child, and if you look at Greek, and you'll see that Zeus came down in the form of an eagle, and he snatched up Ganymede and he brought him to Mount Olympus, where he art him. And this is what they believe. You don't got to believe me. Again, don't shoot the messenger. And this would be marked by a profound new spirituality, a time of mystical enlightenment and enhanced intuition. Is that what we getting? Enhanced? Is this what we getting, y'all? Is this what y'all sensing? Enlightenment and enhanced intuition. Is that what y'all experiencing? I ain't experiencing none of that. Look like we getting dumber. Possibly symbolized by the appearance of a new messianic figure. Aquarian terminology was popularized by, of course, you've heard of this book, Levi H. Dooling's 1907 book, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, which is an esoteric account of the life of Jesus. Now, this is where a man by the name of Timothy Drew comes into the story. Do you all know who Timothy Drew is? I know all my black folk know who he is. And I'm gonna get into Timothy Drew. The Aquarian age would also be a new age. This phrase appears sporadically from the 1880s, but esoteric writers of the 1920s and 1930s regularly presented themselves as advocates of a new age of occult enlightenment. That esoteric awakening found many successors in movements founded around 1930. What year was the Nation of Islam founded, y'all? 1930. And focused on messianic leaders, most of whom came out of that Southern California cult scene. One was the Mighty I Am of Guy and Edna Ballard. Now, I started to focus on Guy Ballard and the I Am movement. I had a whole P, but I said, nah, screw it. I'm going to take Guy Ballard out. I ain't talk about him. But again, Guy Ballard is a man worth researching. Guy Ballard, which became hugely popular in the 1930s. They claimed 1 million followers by 1938, but we don't know if that's exactly true. But again, if you study the occult, this new age occult movement that was happening in America, you will come across the name Guy Ballard. Another was the Silver Legion of America. They were also known as the Silver Shirts. Now, if you look up the silver shirts, they're like these uber fascists. They were this alt-right movement. And to be fair, I don't know much about the Silver Legions, the Silver Shirts, so I'll just leave it at that. But again, they're kind of seen as these more so like an alt-right fascist, militia group with this kind of spiritual undertone. And that movement was, of course, started by a man named William Dudley Peely, the ancestor of so many later white supremacist sects. So the writer here, Philip Jenkins, describes the Silver Shirts as a white supremacist sect. And also in the esoteric tradition of the Nation of Islam, founded by the mysterious and messianic figure Wallace Farad Muhammad. The NOI, like its precursor in the Moorish Science Temple, was as deep into the esoteric as any authentic form of Islam, and the Moorish Science Temple grounded itself in Dooling's The Aquarian Gospel of the Life of Jesus the Christ. Now, who is Timothy Drew? Now, again, we're going to get into, the Moorish science, their book, a book called, it's called the Quran, but of course it's spelled with a K. It's also known as the Circle 7 Quran. If you took the Circle 7 Quran and you held up the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, it's almost word for word. The level of Noble in Timothy Drew, also known as Noble Drew Ali, his plagiarism, I've never seen someone claim to be divine and have some sort of status plagiarize something so blatantly and to still have people believe that this man was something divine when he clearly stole the work of Levi Dooling. I didn't even feel the need to go into it, but just read the Circle 7 Quran and then refer back to the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. It's amazing. He didn't even try to hide it. He just straight up stole Dooling's work. He didn't even try to hide it. Timothy Drew was born in North Carolina to ex-slaves in 1886. He died in 1929 in Chicago, I believe. Was it? Yeah, I believe it happened in Chicago or Detroit. I don't know. Now I'm having a brain freeze. I wrote down Chicago. Y'all can double check that. It's either Chicago, Detroit. I think it's Chicago. Yeah, it is Chicago. It is Chicago. Anyway, second guessing myself here. Known to his followers as Noble Drew Ali, or simply the Prophet, he advocated that they should return to the Islam of their Moorish forefathers, redeeming themselves from racial oppression by reclaiming their historical spiritual heritage. Remember what I said, go all the way back to the beginning. When I talked about this, I coined the term. I've never seen the term. I coined it. I don't know a person I ever heard say it, so I'm going to say I coined it. And that's Black Theosophy. This is Black Theosophy here with Noble Drew Ali. This kind of Eastern mysticism blended with this kind of political liberationism that became popular in the early 1920s, thanks to the likes of W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. His earliest followers believed that he was an orphan for most of his childhood and was raised by Cherokee Indians. After several years as a merchant seaman, he established the Canaanite Temple, the first Moorish American community in Newark, New Jersey in 1903. Inspired by the political and cultural creativity of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association and the Great Migration of Black Southerners to northern states, Noble Drew Ali set up his headquarters in Chicago in 1923 and claimed to be the second prophet of Islam. I guess the first prophet was Muhammad. I guess he's the second. Okay, fine. Fine by me, Mr. Drew. The group's sacred text was the Holy Quran, of course, spelled with a K. This is also known as the Circle 7 Quran, which was distinct from the Quran with the Q-U, with the apostrophe, and y'all know how I spell, of Orthodox Islam, and which members considered to be divinely revealed to Allah, divinely revealed by Allah to Drew. So Allah told Drew. It just came into his head, and he came in with the Circle 7 Quran. Ali taught that blacks in America were part of the Asiatic nations, which includes what? Asians, Africans, and Native Americans. Who's left out? White folks. When he says Native American, he means all of the Americas, Asia, and Africa. Europe don't count. And that the blacks in America were the descendants of Morocco. Hence the Morocco. Again, y'all, I'm not an etymologist. I don't play one on TV. But according to Drew, black folks in America descended from, again, so Moors, just not even break. So the term Moor means black. This is what the term Moor means, right? Even though the Moors, when you're talking about the 7th century Moors, you're talking about a very particular group of individuals. These were Arab-speaking Muslims. And much of Africa's problems were due more so not to European imperialism, but Arab Muslim imperialism. And I don't even feel the need to go in that because y'all already know. The legacy of slavery in Africa can be laid at the feet of Arab Muslims, or should I say Turkish Muslims. And we're going to get into that. But realize and understand that for all the talk we hear about America and the white man and Christianity and so on and so forth, Ethiopia didn't abolish slavery until 1948 at the end of World War II, once the Italians were driven out. Yemen and Saudi Arabia, two Muslim majority countries, did not outlaw slavery until 1969. The last country on record, y'all can fact check me on this, the last country on record, and it's either the last or second to last, because again, I'm fallible. I'm not God. I'm not like them. I don't think I'm the reincarnation of nobody. The last country on record to outlaw slavery was Mauritius. And they did not outlaw slavery until 1980. The Republic of Mauritania is a small island country off the east coast of Madagascar. Predominantly black, predominantly Muslim. 1980. So y'all think about that. We all run around. We black men, we need Islam is our spiritual heritage. Oh yeah? This is why he said the black man came from Asia. See, this is why you get the Hebrew Israelites and they always fighting with all the Egyptophiles and all those who are obsessed with ancient Egypt. Because the whole notion, the whole argument is the black man in America, where does he does his lineage go to Asia? Does it go to Africa? Is he a Hebrew Israelite or is he an Egyptian? Or an Ethiopian or Sudanese or something else? Because Drew Ali said, nah, bro, you are an Asiatic. You're not an African. The Africans are wicked and evil because look what the Africans did to the Israelites. Look at what they did to God's chosen people. You, as a black man in America, are God's chosen people. You are nothing like the filthy African. Have y'all ever heard the Hebrew Israel? Have y'all ever heard them speak? They damn near just as with their racist attitudes, they hate Africans more than they hate white folks. Again, this is the whole tradition and the legacy of men like Noble Drew Ali. My boy Neil say his sources say that Mauritania didn't abolish slavery until 2007. Wow, I had it on good authority that they abolished it in 1980. Well, there you go. I was off by almost 30 years. There you go. But feel free to look it up, y'all. Y'all sources might tell y'all something else. You look at countries like in the way that we have defined slavery, one of the ways that we define slavery is also defined by compulsory military conscription. For as much talk as we hear about North Korea, y'all want to know something about another country that is just as bad or almost worse, a country that I'm going to tell you right now, nobody want to be born in, nobody want to find themselves in, and that's Eritrea. In Africa. Eritrea is the North Korea of Africa. It is one of the worst, most oppressive. It is when I say a slave state, a slave country, it is a slave country. Listen to me when I tell you, just look up Eritrea. But we love Africa. We love it. Okay. Send your ass to Eritrea. Don't go to some nice little resort and you can go through the towns and be like, oh, Africa, they so developed, this, nothing. It ain't folks walking around and with bones in their noses riding zebras. No, man, they get civilized over there. The white man lying to you. I'll take your ass to Eritrea. See if you come out. Ali's demise began with the murder of former MST business manager. MST stands for Moorish Science Temple. I'm not going to keep saying that. Business manager Claude Green. According to the Chicago Defender, Green, this was the article. This was I pull up, I got systems where I can go and pull up archived newspapers. This was a Chicago Defender. Green's murder was the result of an internal split in the MST on March 15, 1929. Green had allegedly allied with several prominent temple leaders who were planning to create a separate faction Islamic group. Supposedly, Green held a meeting of his Confederates on the Sunday prior to his death, attended by informants for Noble Drew Ali. And this is according to Arthur Scott. This is according to Arthur Scott's testimony. He was the janitor at Union Hall where this murder took place. Ali called upon his loyal members, Crumbie Bay, leader of the Pittsburgh Temple, to help plan the murder of Green. A key ally of Green's was supposedly Lomax Bay, who was the leader of the Detroit branch. Lomax Bay controlled one of the MST's most financially successful temples. In 1928, the Detroit branch reported having a total annual income of $19,458. Imagine how much that would be in today's money. But only donated $700 to the prophet. Now, herein lies the beef, they claim, that it was a money issue. Now, they say Green was planning to take members who were upset with Noble Drew Ali's leadership, whatever. They was displeased with the organization. They were going to start their own separate Islamic faction. Noble Drew Ali said, no, we can't have it. But then there's another story that says, well, they weren't paying enough tribute. So you got the Detroit branch making all this money, and they only kicked $700 to the prophet. That Noble Drew Ali wasn't having that. He said, bro, I need a bigger cut. After hearing of the murder and the divisions in the MST, violence erupted in the Detroit Temple on March 22nd, 1929, where 2 Moors and 2 police officers were wounded. Ali was arrested on charges of plotting the murder of former associate Claude Green and died of a mysterious illness months after being released on bond on July 20th, 1929. Now, likely say that Noble Drew Ali likely died of tuberculosis or some form of pneumonia. When you go to just Moorish Science Temple lore, they'll try to make it seem like it was all mysterious. He just it was a plot by the man. I don't know, but likely he died of some earthly illness, which is quite ironic considering the fact that he claimed to have divine healing powers, but the motherfucker didn't heal himself. Another part, and listen, y'all, I'm not getting on nobody. Again, eat what you like, do what, whatever. Eat bugs like they want us to. But veganism, y'all, and this is why that's why veganism, it's an ism. Veganism is another subset of our modern day obsession with secularism. Veganism has become a new religion. When you look, and because they're trying to overcome the limitations of mortality. You still hear folks to this day, especially like a lot of black folk. You go on their websites and Instagram pages and all that. They got all type of pages talking about this guy, Dr. Sebi. I know some of y'all familiar with Dr. Sebi. Some of y'all probably like Dr. Sebi. I might do a whole breakdown on Dr. Sebi and expose that man for the fraud that he was. I'm sorry to hurt y'all feelings. But for all the miraculous stuff he claimed to know and understand, he still died just like the rest of us gonna die. So I'm trying to figure something out. What the hell are we talking about? Because I ain't no man that can overcome death. The god Kronos, or the god of Saturn, which is our modern day popular expression that we call the Grim Reaper, is the god of time. The god Kronos, or the god Saturn, with the skull face and the synth. It's the Greek god Kronos. He is undefeated. Sorry, I don't mean to be pagan, but you get what I'm saying. Everybody gonna die. But y'all still think Dr. Sebi was some kind of magic man. Okay. But he couldn't save himself. He died just like the rest of us. And Noble Drew Ali died just like the rest of us. Now, here is what was reported on March. I'm gonna take you up on that, man. I'm gonna expose Dr. Sebi because I'm sick of it. I even hear folks, y'all hear the conspiracy theory about how the shooting death of the rapper Nipsey Hussle is tied somehow to Dr. Sebi. For y'all to believe anything, especially anything that makes black folks look like we victims of something. Oh man, Nipsey Hussle was about to reveal the magic of life. He was about to give us the secret elixir, man. He was about to promote Dr. Sebi. I think Dr. Sebi was dead by then too, but still. They killed Nipsey Hussle because he was about to go public about what he knew as far as Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi could cure cancer. Dr. Sebi could cure AIDS. Dr. Sebi could do everything. Anytime I hear somebody start talking like that, I don't believe them. You want to know why? Because I know it's tied into all of this. It's tied into Christianity. It's tied into New Thought metaphysics. It's tied into Christian Science. And to quote my homeboy Blanchard Robertson, I rebuke this. I rebuke all of this. This is the whole liberal mindset. This is what the word liberal means. It doesn't mean liberal in the Jeffersonian sense. It means liberal in the sense that we think that by way of our own sort of earthly actions or human intervention, we can liberate ourselves from the consequences of a human existence, that we can liberate ourselves from suffering, liberate ourselves from war, liberate ourselves from poverty, liberate ourselves from death even. What is this transgenderism all about? You hear these fools, what's this guy, this other guy, this Israeli guy running around talking about? I mean, they literally talking about this. Human beings, we should think that in the very near future, we're going to be able to implant our consciousness into machines. This is veganism, all this is wrapped into this whole thing that we're talking about here. I rebuke it all. Shout out to Blanchard Robinson. Now, here is what was reported on March 22nd in 1929. Again, I'll try to stay out the comment section because I got a lot. Again, y'all, I'm not saying, you got some folks with allergies and this and that, man. If you don't want to eat meat, man, listen, y'all. I stay in my lane. I'm not a dietitian. I don't know nothing about none of that. I got a simple philosophy. I just don't overindulge. I keep it simple. Hey man, you eating too much, I just try not to go overboard and I try to keep my diet balanced. That's all I do. But again, I'm not attaching some kind of moralism onto the way I eat. Climate change, save the plants, save the trees, don't eat the cows and all that. It's ridiculous. Again, all this stuff. I talked about Harry Hay last time, the father of gay liberation. He talked about this. It was Harry Hay who brought, again, not just gay liberation, but environmentalism. He brought environmentalism to the forefront of the left-wing contingency. Harry Hay, who again was also obsessed with Native American culture. I don't know. I'm digressing too much, y'all. I need to get through this. I'm almost done. I ain't attacking nobody. Because I got some vegans and vegetarians and stuff that follow me. I ain't saying don't be vegan. But all I'm saying, man, don't make you righteous. That's all I'm saying. It don't make you righteous. Claude Green. Now, this is reported on May 22nd, 1929 in the Hoosier State Chronicles. Claude Green, president of the Chicago, this is from the Hoosier State Chronicles. Claude Green, president of the Chicago Booster Civics Club and former business manager of the Moorish Science Temple, brought to light the highly charged love affairs of the leader of the cult known as Prophet Drew Ali. Oh man, here we go. What kind of love affairs we talking about, y'all? The names of 3 women were linked in more than an ordinary way with that of the prophet. Mary Lou, who was 14, Christina, who was 16, and Pearl, who was somewhere in her 20s. I'm reading directly from the article. This article was published in 1929. This is word for word. 2 of these girls, Mary Lou and Pearl, the prophet was supposed to have married. But when Mary Lou married to the Moorish leader, she was just 12 years old. Oh, it gets worse. She states that the ceremony had been according to the Quran with a K, and she had not known of the existence of any legal papers. It was construed that the prophet had put one over on the expected young girl, the expected young mother. I'm sorry. So he had gotten her pregnant. She was 12 years old. This is Noble Drew Ali. This is the man y'all see with all the regalia, with the hat and the tassel. Sound like another person, don't we? Yeah. We gonna get to him. And that according to the law of Illinois, Ali was guilty of statutory rape. Green's murder was one of the most atrocious committed on the South Side. He was shot 3 times and stabbed in various parts of his body. One plunge of the knife partly disemboweled him. So we got another theory. We got a theory that Claude Green, a member of the Moorish Science, I mean, was he a practicing Moor? Not exactly sure, but he was somewhat of a business manager and a financier, or maybe even a benefactor of the Moorish Science Temple, particularly the Detroit branch. Again, the reason or the call for his murder may very well have been the fact that Claude Green was bringing to light Noble Drew Ali's pedophilia. Again, and it's funny because when y'all see the tassels, y'all see they call it a fez. The fez, again, the fez is uniquely Turkish or Caucasian. I brought a whole, listen, y'all read this book here. This book is written by Walter Williams, not Walter E. Williams, the famous conservative black economist, but Afro-Marxist historian Walter Williams. This book is called The Historical Origins of Islam, where he breaks down how the monophysite sects of Christianity branched off and became what we know as Islam today. Back then, they were called Mohammedans. But the Turks, again, and it flourished and grew into the Ottoman Empire, the Seljukian Turks, the Turkish Empire. These people were not the Arabs that and you understand today. When you think of Arabs, you think of a olive, more of a brown kind of skin hue. No, the Turks were pale. If you go back and you just look at them and you read and you study your history, you will learn and find out that the Turks took up Mohammedanism, or what we call Islam, and they subjugated the pagans of the kind of that what we call the Middle East, I guess today. They subjugated the darker skinned people of the region and forced them to abandon their Sumerian and Babylonian gods and forced them at the point of the sword to take up Islam. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it is mighty ironic, considering the fact, again, because Islam, and then you had Eastern Rome, or what we call Byzantium, and then you had the Turks right next to each other, and then with the Holy Roman city, which is now Istanbul, right? The site of the church. It's now a mosque, but it was the church of the Hagia Sophia. These were not black men. The word Moor means black. They wear the fez. But the fez were worn by pale-skinned Caucasians who called themselves Turks. It's ironic, but nevertheless. Historian Susan Nance says of Ali and his organization, Moorish science is most accurately described as a black spiritualist-style religion steeped in the philosophies of mystical Freemasonry. I ain't even talked about Freemasonry. I don't even think the word Freemasonry came out of my mouth yet. We must take Ali's use of the word Islam, and she puts it in quotes, and other Islamic symbols, which he used not to direct his believers to spiritual Islam, but to the beliefs and practices of Muslims in the United States and elsewhere, but rather as a sign of authenticity and secret wisdom of African Americans had come to recognize in other contexts already. So what she's saying, I don't know if I read that right, but what she's saying is that Noble Drew Ali took Islam, or took he took Freemasonry and other esoteric doctrines, and he dressed it up in Islam. Made it seem like it was Islam or Islamic, or sometimes you'll hear the term Islamism, but it's not Orthodox Islam. I'm no Muslim. I don't subscribe to Islam. But yet and still, as someone who tries to be intellectually accurate and honest, I have to give Islam its respect and due and defend it in this instance, because Noble Drew Ali was perpetrating a fraud. This was not Islam. Do y'all know who William J. Simmons is? William J. Simmons? Anybody in the back? Hands in the back. Y'all know who William J. Simmons is? Well, William J. Simmons was a Tennessean. And what do we know about Tennessee? What's significant about Tennessee, y'all? We start talking about Reconstruction era America. Well, Tennessee was the birthplace of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Nathan Bedford Forrest was the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. William J. Simmons was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. William J. Simmons is believed to be the one most responsible for the Klan's rebirth in 1916. 1915, 1916. The reason why I cite 1916 is because 1916, I believe, was the year that the Quran was published. Y'all probably know about this. It's called the Quran, subtitle, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. This was considered their imperial decree. William J. Simmons rose up to become one of, if not the most powerful member of the Ku Klux Klan, particularly in the state of Tennessee. He wrote a book titled, again, the Quran. So the Quran and the Quran. Do y'all know who Jay Bronson is? We just know him as Jay Bronson. Because see, not only did Noble Drew Ali and this man, William J. Simmons, extract their texts from esoteric Eastern mystical Freemasonic material, the original symbol of the Ku Klux Klan was a crescent and star. How many of you know that? It was not a crucifix. It was not a burning cross. It was a crescent and star. As a matter of fact, there's an old, I wrote the year down. This was sometime during the mid 1800s. I don't know if we know exactly when, from between the mid and 1800s, there is a famous photograph of a Klansman seen in a Ku Klux Klan robe. And on the robe, you can clearly see the star and crescent. And the man seen in that image is known only as J. Bronson. Or perhaps Jay Bronson is the man who took the photograph. Not entirely sure, but you all can look into that. But if you don't believe me, just look it up. The star and crescent was the original symbol of the Ku Klux Klan, going all the way back to the 1860s. Now, in 1930, claiming that he was Noble Drew Ali reincarnated, Wallace D. Farad founded the Nation of Islam in Detroit, Michigan. Now, we about to round out the bend, y'all. We almost done. I know y'all bored. I'm going to get y'all up out of here. Who is Farad Muhammad? Farad Muhammad was born circa 1877. You know, you hear the word circa, that just means roundabout. We don't know exactly when Farad Muhammad was born. And it says that he died in 1934. We think he died, but we don't know for sure. Ooh, my laptop making all type of crazy noises. We think he died in 1934, but we don't know for sure. He just simply disappeared. This is, according to Nation of Islam mythology, the prophet he just went away. He just vanished. This right here, of course, Time magazine is one of the 10 most important books of the century. This is the autobiography of Malcolm X. Let's go to the autobiography of Malcolm X. Let's read about Farad Muhammad. Let's read about Farad Muhammad. Now, Elijah teaches that the greatest and mightiest God who appeared on earth was Master W.D. Farad. He came from the east to the west, appearing in North America at a time when the history and the prophecy that is written was coming to realization. As the non-white people all over the world began to rise, and as the devil white civilization condemned by Allah was, through its devilish nature, destroying itself. Master W.D. Farad was half black and half white, and ain't that rich. But check how they defend it. He was made in this way to enable him to be accepted by the black race in America and to lead them, while at the same time he was enabled to move undiscovered amongst the white people so that he could understand and judge the enemy of the blacks. Now, pardon my French, because people tell me I cuss too much. I ain't been cussing a lot today, have I, y'all? Pardon my French, but that sounds like some bullshit to y'all. Oh, but man, he was mixed. Yeah. Shout out to my co-host, y'all. Check us out on Chad O. Jackson's YouTube channel every Sunday night, Eastern time at 7:30. Chad O. Jackson's YouTube channel, our show, Cutting Through the Culture. My homeboy Bletcher Robinson said, man, I rebuke the Nation of Islam and the fact that all they leaders got to be light-skinned. Why they all pay? Elijah Muhammad, Farad Muhammad, Malcolm X, one of their most praised and noteworthy ministers in the history of the organization, that they shunned and killed. And you know, you got Minister Farrakhan, all these light-skinned, wavy-haired Negroes. My boy Blanche say, I rebuke it. But they gotta be white though, because that's what allows them to, you know, engage in their subterfuge and their espionage. See, they got to be able to move among the white man so they can learn his nature, you see. That sounds like some bullshit to me. Y'all believe that if you want to. Yeah, so anyway, so that's a little bit about Farad. I believe that Farad was a peddler of silk. Not much is known about Farad Muhammad, but there you have it. And again, that leads to the kind of mystification of the Nation of Islam, because very little is known about Farad Muhammad. In 1934, he disappeared without a trace. I just stated that, and it's also in the autobiography of Malcolm X. It is stated that Farad just disappeared. Members of the movement believe Farad to be the incarnation of Allah. Now, again, I started to get into the why behind why Farad disappeared and his legal troubles and what may have actually happened to him, but it doesn't bear mentioning at the moment. And of course, the birthday of Farad Muhammad is still celebrated today by the Nation of Islam, February 26th, as so-called Savior's Day. Let me go back to the autobiography of Malcolm X. I'm going to read here, and this is Malcolm. I was to learn later that Elijah's tales like this of Yaqub, and I might get into the tale of Yaqub, infuriated Muslims of the East while he was in Mecca. I reminded them that it was their fault. So Malcolm tells the Muslims in the East that it's their fault that Muslims in America, the black Muslims in America, are preaching this story that the white man was created by a black scientist named Yaqub. He says it's their fault. Why did Malcolm say that it's their fault? Since they themselves hadn't done enough to make real Islam known in the West. Their silence left a vacuum into which any religious faker could step and mislead our people. So Malcolm is calling, of course, Dr. W.D. Farad and by extension Elijah Muhammad religious fakers. Now, when Elijah Muhammad would die sometime in the 1970s, can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was 75, 76, his son stepped in and became the head of the Nation of Islam, W.D. Muhammad. I think that stood for Warith Deen Muhammad. I think that was Elijah Muhammad's son's name who took over. And he reformed the Nation of Islam and sort of steered them in the direction of more sort of orthodox Quranic interpretation. But then once Elijah Muhammad's son left the leadership post and Louis Farrakhan took over, he restored most of, if not all of, Elijah Muhammad's and Dr. D. Farad and Wallace Farad Muhammad's original teachings. So let's go back to my notes. Historian Michael Gomez says of Farad's relationship with the Moorish Science Temple, there remains sharp disagreement over the precise nature of the relationship between Moorish science and Farad Muhammad. In fact, if any existed. So according to historian Michael Gomez, we don't even know if Farad Muhammad was even associated with the Moorish Science Temple in any way. Farad Muhammad was a principal, but he does say that Farad Muhammad was a principal beneficiary of a theoretical framework and quality of discourse created by Noble Drew Ali. So pretty much he ripped him off. The NOI first gained national, y'all might not know about this. The NOI first gained national attention with the November 20th, 1932 death of a man named James Smith at the hands of his roommate, Robert Harris, who was a member of the Nation of Islam. Smith was killed on a makeshift altar in what the press described as a human sacrifice. The Detroit press began referring to the Nation of Islam as a voodoo cult. A voodoo cult. So again, James Smith was sacrificed. I believe that James Smith was white, and I think his roommate Robert Harris was a black man in the Nation of Islam. And James Harris, he allowed himself to be sacrificed, to be killed as a white devil, as it were. So there you have it. I guess he was listening to his roommate, his buddy. He like, yeah, man, the honorable, a lot, they teaching me to use and I guess he started to actually believe it, Go figure, right? The white liberal complex, right? They saviors, but yet they feel, they sort of loathe themselves at the same time. It's quite fascinating. But I believe that James Smith was in fact white. But nevertheless, y'all can look into that. Again, I'm going on top of my head because I didn't write down the race of James Smith in my notes, but I believe he was white. That was the whole purpose of the sacrifice. What is the Nation of Islam's cosmology? This is what I wrote down. Now I'm going to quote the great pastor Vodi Bakum. Vodi Bakum describes the Nation of Islam as a quasi-Islamic black nationalist cult. That's what they were. The Nation of Islam teaches that God is a man. Again, you study Islam, you study Message to the Black Man, written by Elijah Muhammad. You learn that Elijah believed that God was not a spirit, but God was a physical man. If man is made in the likeness of God's image, then God too must be a man, or else we wouldn't look the way we do. I'm just telling you his philosophy. I know y'all probably thinking like, wait a minute, that don't make sense because, okay. But y'all, I'm just telling y'all, this is what they think. And Elijah believed that, again, that Farad was the mightiest of all the gods. Farad was God himself in the flesh who came to deliver a message to Elijah Muhammad. And of course, this man, who is by their understanding God, is a black man. A black man who created himself out of the blackness of space. This is the Nation of Islam's cosmology. If they tell you this ain't what they believe, they're lying. They believe that the black man created himself out of the blackness of space. Thus, he took on the color of the darkness from which he emerged. So our melanin comes from the fact that we, as black folks, were created out of this vast darkness of space. So, furthermore, all that exists in the universe was created by way of black intelligence. So the black man is divine because blackness in its purity is free of any deviation. Hence, the white man is the devil because he is the opposite of black. Let's go back to the autobiography of Malcolm X. I know many of y'all have read the autobiography of Malcolm X, but anywho. Where did I say I wanted to start off reading? Okay. The black people, God's children, were gods themselves. Master Farad taught, let me read it again. The black people, God's children, were gods themselves, Master Farad taught. And he taught that among them was one, also a human being like the others, who was the God of gods, the most high, the supreme being, supreme in wisdom and power, and his proper name was Allah. Now, since men are mortal, I know what you're probably thinking. Well, if God is a man, wait a minute, that don't make sense. Because men, we die, right? Mind you, the Nation of Islam also believes that there is no heaven or hell. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much. Now, since men are mortal, God too is mortal. Thus, God exists in a succession of incarnations that happens every 25,000 years. The supreme God is the ruler of a divine council of 24 black scientists. Now, of these 24 black scientists was, of course, the wretched Dr. Yaqub, who created the white race. And this white race is prophesized or destined to rule the earth for 6,000 years. And at this point, the earth will be destroyed. This is their version of Armageddon. Earth will be destroyed when the council of these black guys returns on what is called in their cosmology, in their eschatology, their mother plane. Actually, from what I understand, that the Nation of Islam actually sued the movie Independence Day. Actually sued the movie Independence Day. I don't know what the outcome of that lawsuit was, but that's what I heard. That they sued, I don't know, the film studio. I don't know. I don't know. There was a case settled, was probably thrown out. Philip Jenkins. Now, this book here, ladies and gentlemen, go get this book. Go get this book. It's written by Philip Jenkins. It was originally published in 2000. It's called Mystics and Messiahs. I forgot the subtitle. It's called something, but Mystics and Messiahs. Cults and New Religions. He writes, this is Philip Jenkins, because I just talked about the mother plane. Extraterrestrial themes were scarcely novel, as they featured heavily in Mormonism and in Black Muslim mythology. I got some Mormons that follow me. I got one follower of mine, I love her to death. She hit me up. She was like, dude, because I said something in one of my posts one time, and I said something about Mormonism, and she like, hey, dude, I grew up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, man. What you trying to say? You know, I mean, she took it like a G. You know, it was lighthearted, and she would, you know, I'm just giving y'all the information, y'all. Y'all do what I'm not trying to make nobody angry, but go with God. Go with God. I love all my Mormons. Keep rocking with me. Keep rocking with me. But I'm gonna tell you the truth though. I'm not gonna lie to you. They are heavily featured in Mormonism and Black Muslim mythology, and true believers found accounts of starships in the Oahspe Bible of 1882. Y'all familiar with the Oahspe Bible? It's spelled Oahspe. Look up the Oahspe Bible. Interest in UFOs existed on the borderland between fringe science and the occult, and the whole concept reflects the long familiar attempt of marginal religious believers to claim objective scientific validity for essentially occult ideas. So what he's saying is ain't no scientific validity to substantiate the existence of UFOs. You're just making this a part of your mythology because you're trying to gain a devout cult-like following. You look at the Heaven's Gate cult and some of these other cults, the Nation of Islam at the time. Some say, well, they're still a cult. They're mainstream. They're accepted, but we're talking 1920s, 1930s. But listen to their ideas. I know some of you say, well, look at Christianity. Look at their ideas. What? Look at their claims. Men from dust and women coming from the ribs of men. All of it's crazy. All y'all crazy. That's what so atheists and non-religious folk, they say all y'all crazy. Anyway, like I told y'all, I didn't want to make this theological. I just giving y'all some history. Cause y'all know what I believe. Anyway, so interest in UFOs existed. Okay, I got past all that. Groups of the 1930s have been fascinated with mystic rays and radio analogs, while the Black Muslims had their apocalyptic mother plane. And y'all know who else was obsessed, of course, with extraterrestrials and UFOs? Oh, man. My homie, big homie. See, Deborah, my homie. That's big aunt, that's auntie. That might be cousin. I don't know how old she is. She older than me, that's cousin. If we about the same age. Oh no, she older than me, that's auntie. If we about the same age, that's my cousin. Deborah Stone, she said it in the chat. She said Scientology. I was gonna bring up Scientology. Now, have you all been listening? Have y'all been paying attention to a lot of the things that Minister Farrakhan has been saying about Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard lately? A lot of members of the Nation of Islam have been defecting from the Nation of Islam because they are claiming that Scientology is beginning to infect the movement and infect their, I guess, group or church or mosque. Y'all may laugh at me, and I said this last time when I did my breakdown on Malcolm X. I talked about how, you probably can't see it now, it was streaming on Netflix, but the actress Leah Remini, who famously played Carrie Heffernan in the sitcom King of Queens, when, you know, in the midst of her doing her docuseries on exposing Scientology, she did 2 kind of offshoot episodes on the Jehovah's Witnesses, and she did one on the Nation of Islam. And she pointed out, because members of the Nation of Islam had reached out to her because they were claiming that Scientology is beginning to creep into the Nation of Islam. And you can actually you could probably pull up some YouTube videos and images of Farrakhan speaking from his pulpit praising L. Ron Hubbard. Then, of course, you have, L. Ron Hubbard, and again, another individual that I mentioned earlier as well. L. Ron Hubbard also had a very close relationship with Aleister Crowley. All of this you have to understand, you all, and a lot was going on in terms of within the realm of science fiction, in the realm of science fiction novels. You know, H.P. Lovecraft and all of these people. a lot of these folks were, hey, bro, I think my camera cut out. If my camera cut out, I'm gonna keep on talking to IG. Okay, I think I'm back on. Okay, we build it as we fly it, y'all. I'm about done. Yeah, a lot of these folks a lot of these occultists who were incorporating UFOlogy into their structures of beliefs were borrowing a lot of themes and concepts from a lot of these science fiction writers of the day. And particularly the works of Wilford and John Kellogg, Dr. John Kellogg, the cereal Kellogg. I don't know if y'all familiar with the Kellogg family, and more specifically Dr. John Kellogg and his work, the Urantia book. John Henry Kellogg. I'm getting down on vegans. Now I'm telling y'all not to eat cornflakes. If you want to eat cereal, eat cereal. I'm just telling you that the man, Dr. John Kellogg, was into a lot of weird stuff. I'm gonna just leave it at that. Look up Dr. John Kellogg. And the Nation of Islam dictates that only blacks can understand the Bible or the Quran. And since both have been tampered with by white people, they're untrustworthy. So only black people can truly understand the Bible and the Quran. Hence, going back to the autobiography of Malcolm X. When the devil race had spent 2,000 years in the caves, Allah raised up Moses to civilize them and bring them out of the caves. It was given that this devil white race would rule the world for 6,000 years. The book of Moses are missing. That's part of their mythology. That's why it is not known that he was in the caves. Mind you, just got to take their word for it, because this is all coming from Wallace Farad. He was Allah. He was the incarnation of Allah, so you got to take his word. When Moses arrived, the first of these devils to accept his teachings was the first he led out. So let me reread that. When Moses arrived, the first of these devils to accept his teachings, the first he led out, were those we call today the Jews. According to the teachings of this Yaqub history, when the Bible says Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, the serpent is symbolic of the devil white race Moses lifted up out of the caves of Europe and taught them civilization. And this is my last little summary piece, and I'm gone. Supreme wisdom lessons. Y'all heard about the supreme wisdom lessons? Well, the Supreme Wisdom Lessons is one of the foundational texts of the Nation of Islam, and it's called the Wisdom Lessons, or 120. And this is what y'all heard, the 5%ers. Yo, I'm studying 120. 5%ers, they big off in New York. It's 5%ers everywhere, but they mainly on the East Coast. New Jersey, New York, Philly. It was a man by the name of Clarence 13X. I think he was a member of the Nation of Islam, and he formed his own sort of offshoot faction called the 5%ers. The gods, the gods and the earths, the gods being the men and the earths being the women. The sun is God and the earth is female. All right? The sun in its penetrative masculine rays, the phallic symbol, nourishes the earth, and life sprouts forth from the earth. That's the mother womb. It's the male and the female, the nation of the gods and the earths. This is what they study, the wisdom lessons. The lessons appear as a series of question and answer exchanges between nation founder Farad Muhammad and his student prophet Elijah Muhammad. And that's my last thing, and I'm gone. Researcher Michael Muhammad Knight in the Journal for the Study of Esotericism says of the NOI and the Supreme Wisdom Lessons, I just thought this was a good way to end this. The Supreme Wisdom Lessons evinces a thriving marketplace of esoterists and occult thinkers that inform the movement's early contexts. The nation's text could benefit from a closer reading with special emphasis on themes of Western esotericism, such as the appearance of God not as a transcendent spirit incarnated in a body, but rather as a self-perfected human master. Again, man could master himself. All he had to do was gain the knowledge of the gods. a broader interest in self-deification, and a limitless potential of the mind. So the mind's potential is limitless. We can move objects and do all that stuff. How you think our ancient ancestors built the pyramids? We did it with anti-gravitational technologies. We used our mind to... Y'all don't believe this is some of the things that they say in these black consciousness circles, if y'all think I'm just making jokes. The promise of uncovering secrets that have been concealed and suppressed by ruling elites and organized religion. Again, organized religion is meant to take you off the path, of becoming a god. Privileged access to the hidden truth of scripture and an archive of rejected knowledge, intersecting with content such as Freemasonry, magic, the magnetic power of thought, racial mythologies, extraterrestrial civilizations, and notions of a mystical East as home to advanced metaphysical understanding. And that brings us to a conclusion, y'all. And I'm going to close out. Now, mind you, there was a lot of people, man. Ballard, R.S. Clymer. There's a lot of, Christian, Sweet Daddy Grace and Father Divine. And I started to devote a special section to the man who is considered the father of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement in America, a man who gained prominence in the 19th century by the name of William Crowdy. I just didn't have enough time. I said, man, let me figure out how I'm gonna talk about this, and I just put that together, man, because this could go on. I might mess around and do a part 2 of this. But again, what this is all about, and I'm gonna close out. This is about identity and power. This is about man trying to, again, go back. I've heard witches, these so-called white witches, give their own personal testimonies, and they didn't think for a million years that what they were doing were actually hurting people with the things that they were doing. They thought they can use their so-called gifts to help people. This is why, witches and psychic, they look just like you and I. They're not the folks you see in Hollywood on the broom and the with the nose and and that big hat and brewing whatever these Hollywood depictions of witches. That's not how witches look. They're like regular folk. A witch is your girl, that one girl you took out on that date last night, who was running around talking about how she believed that the universe was going to send her a good man. That's witchcraft. Talking about how I can trust, manifestation and vibe. And I've talked about all this during the past 2.5 hours. I've been talking y'all to death. That's witchcraft. People don't mean nothing by it. Some folks are more into it than others because they actually believe that there's power to it. But what you are doing is you are opening yourself up to demonic possession. This is what they think. I mean, and I'm telling you, this is what the people who have practiced that life, who have become born again, say. Y'all ought to leave that stuff alone. What does the Bible say about divination? Y'all look it up. I told y'all I wasn't going to really quote scripture today. But again, man, lay down, your pride, because again, that was a man's original mistake, is believing that he could be like God. This is the whole sort of fuel, the whole kind of drive and the life force and lifeblood of the American left, or the left in general, when we're talking about politics. It is their God complex. They are high on their own sense of moral superiority. They are high on their own hubris. It's a God complex, and it's dangerous. Whether or not you believe all this mystical stuff works, be careful what you wish for. You get too close to God, Icarus, them wings gonna melt and you gonna fall. And I'm gonna show y'all some books, just so y'all know I don't just be talking. Here's a book called Drunk with Blood. This is an atheist's wet dream. This goes through all the God's killings in the Bible, all the times that God killed somebody in the Bible. This is meant to make God look immoral, wicked, and evil, because God allegedly either directly killed people or ordered that people be killed. This is all of God's killings in the Bible. This is another work. I bought my whole book collection. This is another work. The Christ Conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold. This is about how the story of Jesus Christ is really just an allegory of the sun and its passages through all 12 signs of the zodiac. This book here, Anacalypsis. As a matter of fact, it's so big, it's 2 volumes. Godfrey Higgins suggests that humanity, I'm going to just read this. There is great difficulty in setting the proper places according to their seniority, and the 3 sons of Noah as divines have allowed. I think it probable that Japhet was the youngest, and he goes on. But basically, what Godfrey Higgins, the author of Anacalypsis, is saying, he's saying that all of the world's religions were founded by an ancient black race. This is more of that blackety black talk. This is a book titled Black Genesis, the prehistoric origins of ancient Egypt. I told y'all, I done came a long ways. I know the left, and I know a lot about this foolishness because I'm talking more and more like Blanche every day, I swear, because I did it for real. It's another book, The Stargate Conspiracy. What does it say? The truth about extraterrestrial life and the mysteries of ancient Egypt. What did I just say about UFOlogy? It's another work, another atheist work from a man named John Loftus. Why Faith Fails, the Christian Delusion. And here's another one. Mind you, these spiritual beliefs and the politics of the left go hand in hand. This is another work. Critiques of God, Making the Case Against Belief in God. This is a compilation of essays written by a bunch of prominent atheists. Who are some of them? Kurt Bauer, John Dewey, Paul Edwards, Anthony Flew, Sigmund Freud, Eric Fromm. Eric Fromm, y'all know who Eric Fromm is. He was a member of the Frankfurt School. Sidney Hook, Walter Kaufman, Corliss Lamont. If you don't know Corliss Lamont is one of the most sycophantic, sick, disgusting, communist apologists and sympathizers in American history. If you don't know who Corliss Lamont is, look him up. Ain't no amount of mass murdering gulags, mountain of skulls is going to change the mind of Corliss Lamont. All these folks are atheists. Wallace I. Matson, H.J. McCloskey, Ernest Nagel, Kai Nielsen, Richard Robinson, Michael Schwervin, and of course, none other than Bertrand Russell. So that just wanted to give you guys a little background here on, they don't call me Teach 'em Chuck for a reason, man. They don't call me that for a reason, man. And I'm out of here. Y'all be blessed. And make sure you keep your battle armor on. Stay protected at all times because the devil is constantly doing his work. So we got to make sure that we always keep a watchful eye. And may God see us through. All right? Y'all be smooth. And if you want to run this back, for those of you in the comment section on IG, this video will be posted to YouTube in the coming days, all right? Y'all be easy, stay safe. I love y'all. Peace.